It has been a long, long time since I've last checked in. I'm alcoholic, anyways. And the first time I started making these, I was celebrating my year sober. This is a true story. I was celebrating my year sober by getting hammered because I thought that spending a year on chemotherapy, I thought I deserved it. Even though it did get rid of the cancer that I had for 40 years, I thought I deserved to get hammered, and fortunately I made it back to the program after that. And then I checked in again in another year with another year sober, and that time I elected not to get loaded or drunk. And this time is at about 2.5 years at sunset. I always like sunset because to me, I can look at the beautiful sunset and think to myself that I lived another day on the planet, which is really a freaking miracle. It's really a freaking miracle, considering I came from a household where Roar 714s, Roar 712s, whiskey, Demerol, Percodan, Percocet, all that stuff was around the house all the time. I was growing up. I grew up with drug addicts, drug dealers, pharmaceutical drug dealers, doctors, and so every day, clean and sober for me is a miracle because I started out in childhood with the family I was raised with. But 2.5 years, that's new. I mean, one time the most I ever had was 7, and my adoptive mom, I watched her suffer for a year, taking her to chemo and all that, dying from cancer. And she gave up, and she was a strong woman. Watching her, it's a long story, but anyways, it was too hard on me. And so that is why I departed for my 7 years. So about the 2.5, basically when I came right around 2 years, I was way, way too busy to upload anything to celebrate my 2 years. I was too busy to get a coin or any of that stuff. I hopped on the plane and went to Los Angeles to do one of the last things on my bucket list, to become a famous actor. You know, we all have, and it's a long story there too, but it was not something that I desired to do since I was a child. I just kind of fell into it by accident. But so there I am in LA with 2 years of sobriety, going through total culture shock, just burning the candle at both ends. Fortunately I was situated in Beverly Hills, so I was in a nice part of LA because of some people I knew, to put me in that situation. But I was going to I don't know, maybe 4 auditions a week. I was submitting on 300 jobs a week, mostly movies and television. That was my main thing. When I first got there, my first audition for a TV show, I booked that, and I figured, I'm going to do really well. You book your first audition, your first job, and then it aired on TV and everything. But what happened was I went to a few meetings And and the meetings that I went to, it was like I should have gone to different meetings, but the few meetings that I went to, it was like the people that were talking like they were trying to get a job with the casting director in a movie or something. It's like when they were talking, they were like performing, they weren't really being real. They weren't really talking about themselves, they were just trying to like promote themselves and try to be funny and try to make people laugh and try to entertain everybody and try to like hook a casting director or somebody like that, you know, like just total self-promotion Hollywood type of stuff, with which kind of goes with the terrain. But I was turned off by it because people weren't speaking realistically about themselves, in my opinion. You know, I mean, maybe they were speaking realistically about part of their life or in the current thing, but they were like more entertaining than really trying to be real. So I just copped an attitude and I quit going to meetings, which isn't a bright idea, especially when you're in an area where you can get everything in LA. It's all there. I mean, you want to go up, down, sideways, in, out, backwards, whatever you want to get, it's all available in LA as far as getting loaded, you know. So I'm burning the candle at both ends. I'm going to all these auditions and stuff. I'm getting some work. I'm gradually working my way up. I'm getting agents that are like interested in me. They're biting. You know, a lot of people go there and they can't even get an agent. I was getting agents that were biting, but not the biggies, not the ones that I really wanted. And I'm doing these auditions, and so I'm spending, you know, half of the day remembering scripts and the other half of the day regurgitating what I memorized, you know. And it takes time and it takes a lot of hard work. And traveling all over the place, using my GPS, trying to avoid getting into accidents and all the crazy traffic there and stuff. And it was just really hard on me. It was really stressful. And eventually the unforeseen happened. I cracked, basically, my post-traumatic stress disorder from all the abuse, from all the stuff I've been through in my life. Somehow doing all of that stuff, just burning the candle at both ends and everything, I cracked and the PTSD took over. And when I crack with my PTSD, I don't get visuals, you know, of all the stuff because there's just too much trauma. There's too much abuse I've been through, too many circumstances, you know, that I've been through in my life. I just, what happens is I disassociate. I can't get my mind to work correctly. It's like my mind becomes numb. I can't concentrate. I could no longer remember scripts that well and all this stuff and all that. And then at one of my final auditions I was at, I remember being there and I'm looking at the crew rather than looking at the camera. And it was so weird. It was like, I know how to do all this stuff. I've been doing it for years, but my unconscious was saying, you need to stop, and I'm not going to let you do this. So my unconscious, it was a really, really weird feeling. I think it was my last audition there. My body was just saying, you're done. You know, game's over. You need to hang this up. And all that's going through my head while I'm trying to do this character, trying to nail this part. But my unconscious is saying, no, you're done. You know, and the unconscious is a very powerful thing. most of us don't think about our unconscious. We just think about what's going through our head, and, or how we're seeing and viewing and dealing with life. As we go through with it, we don't realize sometimes how much our unconscious is dictating what we're actually going to do. And so my unconscious just said, you're done. Game's up. You're hanging it up. And then after the audition and I got home, I kind of realized, wow, my self-conscious just shut me down. Aside from the PTSD and all the other stuff. So before the final crackdown, I resorted back. I didn't go to drinking and drugs or anything like that, but I did resort to nicotine because I always use nicotine to suppress my PTSD, to block the feelings, to help me concentrate better, and to try to cope with the PTSD rather than getting on meds. I tried meds, my old meds that I used to use for PTSD for a few days, and they didn't work. It just made it worse. So that's it. That's my dream there, getting smashed, and there was really nothing I could do about it. I tried everything I could to cope with the situation. And my physical body, I just felt extremely stressed and extremely burned out, and I think I had a glimpse of maybe taking a drink, getting loaded or whatever. That's another story. It looks like I'm going to have to do that in a second video, because I'm not going to cover that part about my awareness, how my awareness, my paradigm, my reality has changed differently than it has been before in my life. Like when I was 1 year old, I always saw through the system and the brainwashing and how people were brainwashed and all that stuff. I can remember back to when I was 1 year old. I remember the Kennedy assassination when I was 1 year old. I can remember that. I can remember that far back. So, yeah. So basically, I survived and I got out of there. I called it good. And I stayed sober through that experience. It was tough, And far as the future of all that stuff going, I don't know where that's going to go, but I can't do that again. That's a done deal. I don't want to go there, but I stayed sober through it. So it looks like I'm going to have to go into, so that's probably the bad part of my 2.5 years. That's the roughest part so far of my 2.5 years. So I'll talk about the better parts of the 2.5 years, the upside, I guess.